Welcome to our indicators of progress outside of the scale.
This is a very, very exciting topic for us and a lot of people, but sometimes we get so stuck on the scale or measurements that it's hard to acknowledge or appreciate the progress that we're making in all the other areas of life, health, happiness, all that fun stuff.
It is. And especially I feel as though this is probably a really good topic after the holidays, during the holidays, anytime you have high and low days, all types of things, right? So let's first talk a little bit about the scale only mentality. So what exactly is that? Well, when we're talking about the scale only mentality, we are typically talking about people who have an infatuation with a particular number on the scale. So oftentimes in their head, they have this idea of oh, I'll be happy or I'll be excited when I'm this amount of pounds. And so they associate that number on the scale with how they think they're going to look at that weight
or feel, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe for some people, what they look like in the past at that weight. So a lot of times when people are like, oh, I wish I was this weight. And when you dive a little deeper, it's because I was that weight when I was in college and that's when I was the happiest. But doesn't necessarily mean that if when they get back to that number, life is going to be the same.
No,
that's just what they associate with an improved quality of life.
Yeah, you have no idea what you're going to look like at that weight, honestly, especially now, depending on the factors that life gives you, right?
And with the scale only, it's not necessarily just in infatuation or obsession with a weight that you want to be. Sometimes it can go the other way where if it's scale only, a lot of times we'll be scared to step on the scale, or they hate the scale. They won't want to know the number.
Totally.
Right. And so it doesn't have to be just about someone that's anxiously looking at it and hoping for a result. Sometimes people will shy away from it because they don't like what they see when they step on it.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that comes along with the whole scale only mentality is seeking constant daily downward trend. And the reality is there's going to be ups and downs, and we're going to talk about this momentarily, but there's going to be ups and downs. That's the truth of it. Even they associate no scale change, meaning no progress. And what happens is a lot of times, depending on how you are starting your journey, what's going on inside your journey, you may not even see a scale change, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not progressing. There are different types of what you can call masking effects, and we'll talk about the scale fluctuations shortly, and we'll talk about other indicators of progress besides the scale.
But even with that, it's realistically, if you're losing weight at a decent rate, how long do you really think you can keep that up? One, in the beginning, sometimes it's a little bit easier to build up momentum, but as you get further down the road, things slow down because you have less overall weight to lose.
Yeah, you're not going to have as big a drops as maybe you were conditioned to before.
And so it's all to some degree marginal and relational to where you're at in your journey. And sometimes, like she said, that is where it seems like on the scale, it is just a straight line because you're making progress in so many other areas. Oh, you're right at the finish line, or you're where you want to be. So maintaining is a good thing. There's so many people that hit a goal weight and then they get scared of maintaining. So then they go back up, or they don't know what to do. And they feel like just staying at that weight is stuck, which it's not. Realistically, that is the goal, is to get to a look and feel that you're happy with, and then improve other areas of life while maintaining your health.
For sure. They associate an upward fluctuation with fat gain. And once again, that's not necessarily the case. They let the scale dictate their mood and behaviors. And this comes with a two-way street. So for instance, maybe you saw weight on the scale and you're like, oh my gosh, yes. And then the next day you were above that weight. And so you get pissed off, you're depressed, you're just all stompy all day. And then you're like, you know what? Fuck it. My weight's up. I'm just going to eat whatever I want. And then there's the opposite effect where maybe you have a decent downward trend. And then you're like, ooh, I'm cruising. I'm doing real good. Maybe I can loosen the reins in regards to my habits and behaviors because I earned it or deserve it or whatever you want to say.
Or in some people, it's even just oh, I made really good progress. Time to go celebrate, right?
Yeah.
And obviously there's nothing wrong with acknowledging a milestone, but at the same time, if you celebrate too hard, or you don't realize like, all right, cool, like as celebration can cause a weight fluctuation, doesn't mean you're going backwards. But like she said, sometimes seeing either a downward or an upward trend can lead to behaviors that will then kind of perpetuate something that you may not want.
And then the other thing is, a lot of people relate their self-worth to a number on the scale. So if they don't see a number that they're shooting for, or it's higher than they want, then it's like, I'm a bad person, I'm doing horrible, I'm not making any progress when it comes to the scale. And so then they have all these depressive emotional feelings, which sucks. And we're going to cover those things momentarily. And as we're mentioning, the reality is the scale it's literally one measurement of progress, one measurement. And while it's a great tool, it is one tool that we use to measure progress. And it's very important that we use this tool in correlation with other measurements of progress. And your best weight, kind of how we had mentioned before, is the one where you are looking and feeling your best while you're actually enjoying life. And so maybe, in the past you had this particular number and it was your best life and you were doing all these things. And like, that's probably why you may have an association with what you're doing, but life looks differently. You are a different person. There are different circumstances. And so it may look different, right?
Yep.
And when it comes to the scale, expect this. This is the reality. You're going to freak out when you have these highs. And as you can see, like, there's this downward trend. And it's like, if you're looking at the average over time, it's like, I'm doing great. But when you have these highs and you're looking at it in a micro view, you're not seeing the whole picture. And so we're challenging you to take a step back and look at the actual picture. And as we mentioned, there might even be minimal weight changes. And then what happens? You freak out, you still freak out, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not making progress. And this is why it's so much more important, as we mentioned, to look at the other indicators that we're going to talk about and general fluctuations for why they happen. So general causes for scale fluctuations, we're not going to dive too deep into these, but I mean,
that's a question mark.
Question, are you on your period? Did you have a hard workout, increased carb intake, higher food day, lower food day? Are you FOS, full of shit? Did you go out to eat, increased stress? Are you sick? Did you have some alcohol? Did you introduce some new food? I mean, the list literally goes on. There are all types of reasons for scale fluctuations. And this is kind of where, when you are using the Fit Foodie Lifestyle Tracker, there is a place on there that you can put notes for the end of the day for you to actually reflect and be like, like, what did I eat today? How was I feeling? Am I about to start my period? What was the workout I did? Oh, I notice after I do legs, I tend to have a weight spike, or whatever it is. And you can start to make these correlations for yourself.
Yeah. And especially like if you're sticking within specific targets, but you're like, so like if your calories are always the same, but they come from different things like food, alcohol, at home, going out to eat, all of those things, the reality is that like those different environments and the different things within the food will cause water retention or your weight to go up and down. But the reality is that like, if the calories are the same, then there's no way that you can gain extra fat. It's just the fact that like, oh, these things had different,
effects on you.
Yeah. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but know that like, if you're within those, ranges and targets, which is why they're there, you can enjoy everything within that. You will see some up and downs, but you will always be moving in the right direction, because if two foods or two things have the same caloric load, one may react differently to your body, but it's not necessarily going to cause you to gain fat.
It'll be more of a like, ooh, my body feels a little inflamed and bloated because my stomach didn't agree, or whatever, right? And then let's talk about other progress indicators that are very important to talk about and look at. So other indicators, we're talking other physical indicators, other mental and emotional indicators, even behavioral indicators. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't necessarily discuss or put in relation into that whole, we'll say, big picture of things. I know, almost got you. So when it comes to physical indicators, let's talk about other ways of measurement. So actual tape measurements. I don't like tape measurements because I don't it's a lot of work for me. I like photos, but everybody's different. Some people, they use tape measurements and they love seeing like inches go down. I like photos. We do weekly photos, and I like that because it allows me to see, my trend over time as well. How are your clothes fitting? How are your energy levels? Are you getting stronger in the gym? Do you have a little bit more endurance? You're able to go up the stairs with ease. Are you able to maintain your weight in different environments? Maybe lab tests. Maybe you've gotten some blood tests done and you've checked out, had them repeated and they're improving. Are other people noticing your improvements? And there's so many more things.
Yeah.
This is just a little bit.
It could be also like, how do you like the way that you look and feel naked versus,
Yeah.
like obviously clothes, but without clothes as well.
Yeah.
And then like with photos, they don't necessarily have to always just be, like progress style
No.
photos. It just be
Selfies actually make a big difference.
selfies, going out, in life, hanging out with friends, going out to a restaurant, like taking pictures of yourself, living your life. And it's cool to be able to compare those to past situations where you were with friends, family, going out, all of that, and see how much you've changed.
Maybe
right?
you didn't even like to take photos because you didn't like
Yeah.
to take photos.
And so
right?
it doesn't have to be a, just a stand there, turn and like pose. Sometimes the lifestyle or more candid photos was where you'll see it the most, or you'll love seeing the reflection of the results more.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about a couple mental and emotional indicators. And so, for instance, perspective changes on the scale. So you use the scale as a tool. You start doing it in a way in which you're able to identify causes for these high and low weights. You're like, oh, we call it predict the future, because you're like, oh, I ate a lot more food last night. I didn't poop. It probably means I'm going to be heavier tomorrow morning. It's okay. I know that that's, why I'm going to be heavier.
And once you start doing this long enough, you could probably start to predict pretty
How big of a
accurately.
weight
Yeah,
swing.
it's like, oh, I'll probably be this much,
Yeah.
or this much down, depending on what's going on. And sometimes that's a fun game where I like to play that game. It's like, all right, cool. Like this is what I expect for the next day. And then, the longer you do this, the more often you guess appropriately.
And then, we all have emotions. We're human beings. Yes, we know. But one of the markers of progress in regards to that could be like acknowledging your emotions and being like, oh, I know that this is challenging for me, but I'm going to take a look at the facts and see what's actually happening versus allowing your emotions to dictate your behavior, right? Other things like maybe you have increased confidence in general. You want to take photos, like you mentioned. You have an improved food relationship. Those are massive, massive changes that people forget, honestly.
Yeah. So going out, having a meal, and then not feeling like you have to work it off the next day or some form of punishment is a huge win.
Yeah. Behavioral indicators. So do you have an improved quality of life?
Oh.
Have you ever thought about that? A lot of times, in the past, you think, oh, I do all these things and I restrict and I'm depressed in my dieting phase and it's so hard. And it's like, well, that's not a really good quality of life. And don't get me wrong, if you are dieting, there's definitely going to be some things that are going to be challenging. But what are the other things that you're doing in your life to help improve your quality of life? Changing and being able to incorporate taboo, or maybe what you thought were taboo foods, into your plan while being able to make progress. That's super massively successful.
Because we've seen plenty of you guys where it's like, oh, they're making really good progress, and then increasing the frequency at which you go out to eat, but still maintaining progress. It's not necessarily as fast as if you were weighing and measuring everything at the house. But the reality is, if you're going out, once, twice, 2, 3 times a week, and still moving forward, that is amazing in comparison to putting everything in Tupperware, prepping all of your meals, only eating at the house, telling your friends no, and moving so much faster. So it's like, all right, cool. Figuring out what is important. And sometimes we've seen some of you where you can go out to eat all the time and still make really good progress moving forward, depending on the choices that you make. Right. And so that's where it's like, oh, fantastic, because you get to do all of the things and enjoy all the things that everyone wants in life while still looking and feeling the way that you want or moving towards it.
And I think probably my biggest thing is the behavioral indicators, that people don't realize that as you're doing this in a sustainable way, you're slowly becoming a completely new person because you have these new habits and skills and mindset that you start to incorporate, and you just learn new knowledge and you learn about your body and you learn what's important to you. Like even during the holidays, like so many people gain weight during the holidays, but maybe this time, rather than, it could even be like in the past, every single time the holidays come around, I've gained 10 pounds. This year, I only gained 5 pounds, or I maintained my weight. Like little things like that add up significantly. And you're going to put yourself, or you have to put yourself into these situations continually to actually learn and improve. Otherwise, you're never going to know how to change the plan. Right.
Yep. So you're
I
like,
mean,
like we've talked about so many times, and kind of test, retest, come up with a plan, see how it works, see how you've improved and how you can continue improving.
mhm. So how to take your power back from that dang scale. Basically, we like to say, just like numb yourself to the scale. It's not something that is easy, but it is relatively simple, and it is going to take time. But being consistent in the way that you weigh yourself and doing daily weights, so that you can start to plot that graph and see, how are you trending? Are you going down? Are you maintaining? Are you going up? How does my weight correlate with the other things in my life, the behavioral factors, the way that I'm looking and feeling, the mental and emotional things that are also going with that. And then, just like I said, looking at identifying trends, looking at overall weekly averages, and correlating everything all together to really look at the facts.
And like we've talked about, like everything, so many things in life can cause weight fluctuations. And so like the weighing yourself consistently daily helps. So that way, like for whatever reason, if you only weigh once a week, if you weigh in on what would have been a high day or an upswing in regards to weight, or a low swing, sometimes it can cause more unwanted emotion. So like doing it at an increased frequency helps you to have a better picture of what's actually going on. So when you do get those outliers, you can identify them as outliers and potentially see what led to it, right? Versus being like, oh, I didn't make any progress this week. It's like, all right, like I actually had a new low. It's just this one day I was up.
Yeah. So basically, in conclusion, use the scale as a tool. It is one of the tools in your tool belt. Identify other progress indicators, the ones like we mentioned, physical, mental, emotional, behavioral. Really take a moment to just acknowledge and be aware of who you are becoming and what you are doing, and be patient with yourself.
And sometimes, like one of the things that we didn't necessarily dive super into here was that, like, sometimes even if your weight is stable, you can check it against and this maybe go into physical and behavioral, but like if you're someone that trains, performance and training, right? Or if you like activities, energy levels, things like that, was like, all right, cool. Like even if your weight is staying the same, but you feel like you're increasing in performance in all areas of life, that's a huge measure of improvement. So like your weight can be stable, but if you feel like you're getting stronger in training, or you can push longer in for performance, then like that's a really good sign that things are moving in the right direction. But sometimes people can make progress in the gym or in their training, but when their weight's the same, they're like, oh, I'm not making any progress. Okay, having stable weight and increasing performance is a huge win.
Yes. But if you have any questions, be sure to submit them. They are inside the app under the Fit Foodie Coaching course.